every Linux distribution in existence. We will start off with the most popular beginner-friendly flavors. Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a Linux distribution based on Debian and composed mostly of free and open-source software. Ubuntu is released every 6 months, with long-term support (LTS) releases every 2 years. As of October 2022, the most recent release is 22.10, Kaneda, and the current long-term support release is 22.04, Jammy Jellyfish. Ubuntu is officially released in 3 editions: Desktop, Server, and Core for Internet of Things devices and robots. All of the editions can run on the computer alone or in a virtual machine. Ubuntu is developed by British company Canonical and a community of other developers under a meritocratic governance model. Canonical provides security updates and support for each Ubuntu release, starting from the release date and until the release reaches its designated end-of-life (EOL) date. Canonical generates revenue through the sale of premium services related to Ubuntu and donations from those who download the Ubuntu software. Next up, Linux Mint. Linux Mint is a community-driven Linux distribution based on Ubuntu, bundled with a variety of free and open-source applications. It can provide full out-of-the-box multimedia support for those who choose to include proprietary software such as multimedia codecs. The Linux Mint project was created by Clement Lefebvre and is actively maintained by the Linux Mint team and community. Moving on, Debian Linux. Debian, also known as Debian GNU Linux, is a Linux distribution composed of free and open-source software, developed by the community-supported Debian project, which was established by Ian Murdoch on August 16, 1993. Debian is one of the oldest operating systems based on the Linux kernel. The project is coordinated over the internet by a team of volunteers guided by the Debian project leader and 3 foundational documents: the Debian Social Contract, the Debian Constitution, and the Debian Free Software Guidelines. New distributions are updated continually, and the next candidate is released after a time-based freeze. Since its founding, Debian has been developed openly and distributed freely according to the principles of the GNU project. Because of this, the Free Software Foundation sponsored the project from November 1994 to November 1995. When the sponsorship ended, the Debian project formed the non-profit organization Software in the Public Interest to continue financially supporting development. A relative newcomer to Linux distributions, Pop! OS. Pop! OS is a free and open-source Linux distribution based upon Ubuntu and featuring a customized GNOME desktop environment known as Cosmic. The distribution is developed by American Linux computer manufacturer System 76. Pop! OS provides full out-of-the-box support for both AMD and NVIDIA GPUs. It is regarded as an easy distribution to set up for gaming, mainly due to its built-in GPU support. Pop! OS provides default disk encryption, streamlined window and workspace management, keyboard shortcuts for navigation as well as built-in power management profiles. The latest releases also have packages that allow for easy setup for TensorFlow and CUDA. Pop! OS is maintained primarily by System 76, with the release version source code hosted in a GitHub repository. Unlike many other Linux distributions, it is not community-driven, although outside programmers can contribute, view and modify the source code. They can also build custom ISO images and redistribute them under another name. Changing tracks, we're looking at Fedora Linux. Fedora Linux is a Linux distribution developed by the Fedora project. Fedora contains software distributed under various free and open-source licenses and aims to be on the leading edge of open-source technologies. Fedora is the upstream source for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Since the release of Fedora 35, 6 different editions are made available tailored to personal computer, server, cloud computing, container and Internet of Things installations. A new version of Fedora Linux is released every 6 months. As of February 2016, Fedora Linux has an estimated 1.2 million users, including Linus Torvalds, as of May 2020, creator of the Linux kernel. Something completely different, and much more advanced, Arch Linux. Arch Linux is an independently developed, x86-64 general-purpose Linux distribution that strives to provide the latest stable versions of most software by following a rolling release model. The default installation is a minimal base system, configured by the user to only add what is purposely required. Pacman, a package manager written specifically for Arch Linux, is used to install, remove and update software packages. Arch Linux uses a rolling release model, meaning there are no major releases of completely new versions of the system. A regular system update is all that is needed to obtain the latest Arch software. The installation images released every month by the Arch team are simply up-to-date snapshots of the main system components. Arch Linux has comprehensive documentation, consisting of a community-run wiki known as the Arch Wiki. Another Arch relative, but much more popular than Arch, Manjaro Linux. Manjaro is a free and open-source Linux distribution based on the Arch Linux operating system that has a focus on user-friendliness and accessibility. It uses a rolling release update model and Pacman as its package manager. It is developed mainly in Austria, France and Germany. Revving up the RPMs, OpenSUSE. OpenSUSE is a free and open-source RPM-based Linux distribution developed by the OpenSUSE project. The initial release of the community project was a beta version of SUSE Linux 10.0. Additionally, the project creates a variety of tools, such as UST, Open Build Service, OpenQA, Snapper, Machinery, Portus, QE and OSEM. Linux for the enterprise market, Red Hat Linux. Red Hat Enterprise Linux is a commercial open-source Linux distribution developed by Red Hat for the commercial market. Red Hat Enterprise Linux is released in server versions for x86-64, Power ISA, ARM64, and IBM-Z, and a desktop version for x86-64. Fedora Linux serves as its upstream source. The first version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux to bear the name originally came onto the market as Red Hat Linux Advanced Server. In 2003, Red Hat rebranded Red Hat Linux Advanced Server to Red Hat Enterprise Linux AS and added two more variants, Red Hat Enterprise Linux ES and Red Hat Enterprise Linux WS. Red Hat uses strict trademark rules to restrict free redistribution of their officially supported versions of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but still freely provides its source code. Third-party derivatives can be built and redistributed by stripping away non-free components like Red Hat's trademarks. Examples include community-supported distributions like Rocky Linux and Alma Linux, and commercial forks like Oracle Linux. A Linux distribution that tries to mirror the look of Mac OS. Elementary OS. Elementary OS is a Linux distribution based on Ubuntu LTS. It promotes itself as a thoughtful, capable, and ethical replacement to Mac OS and Windows and has a pay-what-you-want model. The operating system, the desktop environment, and accompanying applications are developed and maintained by Elementary, Incorporated. Moving on to privacy-focused distributions, we now find one called Parrot OS. Parrot OS is a Linux distribution based on Debian with a focus on security, privacy, and development. Parrot is based on Debian's testing branch, with a Linux 5.10 kernel. It follows a rolling release development model. The desktop environment is Mate, and the default display manager is LightDM. The system is certified to run on devices which have a minimum of 256 MB of RAM, and it is suitable for both 32-bit, i386, and 64-bit, 64 Armenian DRAMs, processor architectures. Moreover, the project is available for ARMv7, ARMHF, architectures. Next up, we have Kali Linux. Kali Linux is a Debian-derived Linux distribution designed for digital forensics and penetration testing. It is maintained and funded by Offensive Security. Kali Linux has approximately 600 penetration testing programs, tools, including Armitage, a graphical cyber attack management tool, MAP, a port scanner, Wireshark, a packet analyzer, Metasploit, penetration testing framework, John the Ripper, a password cracker, SQL MAP, automatic SQL injection and database takeover tool, AirCrackMG, a software suite for penetration testing wireless LANs, Burp Suite and OWASP Zap web application security scanners, etc. It was developed by Matty Agaroni and Devin Kearns of Offensive Security through the rewrite of Backtrack, their previous information security testing Linux distribution based on Knoppix. The name was inspired by the Hindu goddess Kali. Kali Linux is based on the Debian testing branch. Most packages Kali uses are imported from the Debian repositories. Kali Linux's popularity grew when it was featured in multiple episodes of the TV series Mr. Robot. Tools highlighted in the show and provided by Kali Linux include Bluesmith, Bluetooth Scanner, John the Ripper, Metasploit Framework, Map, Shellshock, and WGT. The tagline of Kali Linux and Backtrack is "The quieter you become, the more you are able to hear," which is displayed on some backgrounds. The Arch derivative of Kali Linux, BlackArch. BlackArch is a penetration testing distribution based on Arch Linux that provides a large amount of the cybersecurity tools. It is an open-source distro created specially for penetration testers and security researchers. The repository contains more than 2,800 tools that can be installed individually or in groups. BlackArch is similar in usage to both Pt.1 and Kali Linux when fully installed, with the major difference being BlackArch is based on Arch Linux instead of Debian. BlackArch only provides the XFCE desktop environment in the slim ISO but provides multiple pre-configured window managers in the full ISO. Similar to Kali Linux and Pt.1, BlackArch can be burned to an ISO image and run as a live system. BlackArch can also be installed as an unofficial user repository on any current Arch Linux installation. An OS that respects your privacy, Unix. Unix is a kick-secure-based security-hardened Linux distribution. Its main goals are to provide strong privacy and anonymity on the Internet. The operating system consists of 2 virtual machines, a workstation and a Tor gateway, running Debian GNU Linux. All communications are forced through the Tor network. Both Unix and kick-secure have documentation which spans from basic operating system maintenance to more advanced topics. An Ammusic eCognitive on-the-go OS, Tails Linux. Tails, or the Ammusic Incognito Live System, is a security-focused Debian-based Linux distribution aimed at preserving privacy and anonymity. It connects to the Internet exclusively through the anonymity network Tor. The system is designed to be booted as a live DVD or live USB, and leaves no digital footprint on the machine unless explicitly told to do so. It can also be run as a virtual machine, with some additional security risks. The Tor project provided financial support for its development in the beginnings of the project, and continues to do so alongside numerous corporate and anonymous sponsors. The OS recommended by Edward Snowden, Qubes OS. Qubes is a security-focused desktop Linux distribution that aims to provide security through isolation. Virtualization is performed by Xen, and user environments can be based on, with official support, Fedora or Debian, or, with community support these templates may be somewhat less stable, since the Qubes developers do not test them Unix, Ubuntu, Arch Linux, CentOS, or Gentoo among other operating systems. For example, Qubes Windows tools support Microsoft Windows 7 and later. Systems like Qubes are referred to in academia as Converged Multi-Level Secure (MLS) systems. Other proposals of similar systems have surfaced, and SecureView is a commercial competitor. However, Qubes OS is the only system of the kind actively being developed under a free and open source software (FOSS) license. Now to come down to the crucial thing, the Linux operating system itself. Linux is a family of open-source Unix-like operating systems based on the Linux kernel, an operating system kernel first released on September 17, 1991, by Linus Torvalds. Linux is typically packaged as a Linux distribution, which includes the kernel and supporting system software and libraries, many of which are provided by the GNU project. Many Linux distributions use the word Linux in their name, but the Free Software Foundation uses the name GNU Linux to emphasize the importance of GNU software, causing some controversy. Popular Linux distributions include Debian, Fedora Linux, and Ubuntu, the latter of which itself consists of many different distributions and modifications, including Lubuntu and Xubuntu. Commercial distributions include Red Hat Enterprise Linux and SUSE Linux Enterprise. Desktop Linux distributions include a windowing system such as X11 or Wayland, and a desktop environment such as GNOME or KDE Plasma. Distributions intended for servers may omit graphics altogether, or include a solution stack such as LAMP. Because Linux is freely redistributable, anyone may create a distribution for any purpose. Linux was originally developed for personal computers based on the Intel x86 architecture, but has since been ported to more platforms than any other operating system. Because of the dominance of the Linux-based Android on smartphones, Linux, including Android, has the largest installed base of all general-purpose operating systems as of May 2022. Although Linux is, as of November 2022, used by only around 2.6% of desktop computers, the Chromebook, which runs the Linux kernel-based Chrome OS, dominates the US K-12 education market and represents nearly 20% of sub-$300 notebook sales in the US. Linux is the leading operating system on servers. Over 96.4% of the top 1 million web servers operating systems are Linux, leads other big iron systems such as mainframe computers, and is used on all of the world's 500 fastest supercomputers since November 2017, having gradually displaced all competitors. Linux also runs on embedded systems, that is, devices whose operating system is typically built into the firmware and is highly tailored to the system. This includes routers, automation controls, smart home devices, video game consoles, televisions, Samsung and LG smart TVs, automobiles, Tesla, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai and Toyota, and spacecraft, Falcon 9 rocket, Dragon crew capsule and the Perseverance rover. Linux is one of the most prominent examples of free and open source software collaboration. The source code may be used, modified and distributed commercially or non-commercially by anyone under the terms of its respective licenses, such as the GNU General Public License, GPL. The Linux kernel, for example, is licensed under the GPL v2. Alrighty, that's it for this video folks. Please remember to hit that subscribe button, and do be sure to give my videos a thumbs up, it would be much appreciated, and do enable notifications, so that you won't miss out on any future videos. Okay, bye for now.